Maya sat in the dimly lit room, staring at the reflection of herself in the full-length mirror. Her wedding dress clung to her body like a second skin, the silky white fabric almost suffocating in its perfectness. The luxury of the dress, the diamonds in her ears, the glistening veil on her head, all seemed so out of place for someone like her, someone who grew up working in a small cafe, barely able to pay rent. She swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in her throat as the weight of the moment crashed down on her. "What have I done?" she thought, her fingers trembling as she reached up to adjust her veil. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the day she was about to marry a billionaire, Damien Caldwell. He was everything she had ever dreamed of. He had the money, the power, and most importantly, he had chosen her, Maya, a girl, from the wrong side of the tracks. But as the sound of the wedding bells echoed through the church, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. "Are you ready?" The voice of her maid of honor, Emma, broke through her thoughts. Maya turned to face her. Emma was smiling, her face full of excitement, but Maya could see the hint of doubt behind her eyes. "Yeah, I think so," Maya said softly, forcing a smile. The mirror reflected the conflict that raged inside her, the self-doubt, the guilt, the fear. She was about to marry the man who could give her everything she'd ever wanted. But deep inside, she didn't feel happy. Damien was perfect. There was no doubt about that. He was charming, kind, and had swept her off her feet when they first met. But now, as she stood in the church, ready to take the vows, Maya realized something was missing. Love. Or maybe it was there, but it felt more like an obligation than anything else. Her thoughts flashed back to the moment he proposed, how he had asked her with such certainty, surrounded by the glittering lights of a fancy restaurant. It had felt like a dream, too good to be true. But now, as she stared at her reflection, that dream felt more like a trap. Her phone buzzed on the vanity, breaking her chain of thought. It was a text from her best friend, Olivia. "Maya, are you sure about this? I mean, really sure?" She stared at the message for a long time. Olivia was always the voice of reason, the one who told her when she was doing something crazy. But Maya had ignored her advice, convinced that this was it, the life she had always dreamed of. Security, comfort, a future with a man who could give her everything. But at what cost? A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Damien's voice, deep and commanding, called through the wood. "Maya, it's time." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, it felt like she was stepping into an unknown future. The nerves, the fear, the doubts, they all washed over her. Her hand reached for the doorknob, but her body felt heavy, like she was walking into a cage. She forced herself to open the door. And there he was. Damien stood at the end of the hallway, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, looking like a prince, from one of her childhood fairy tales. His dark eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything else in the world seemed to disappear. He was the man of her dreams, or at least she used to think so. "I've been waiting for you," he said softly, his lips curling into a smile. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. Maya's chest tightened as she stepped toward him, forcing herself to smile back. As he took her hand, she could feel the weight of everything she was about to lose, her freedom, her dreams, and perhaps even her chance at real love. The wedding march began to play, and the doors to the church swung open. Maya's heart pounded as she walked down the aisle. Each step felt heavier, as though she was walking toward a life she wasn't sure she wanted. The crowd was a blur, the faces all smiling at her, congratulating them. But Maya's eyes never left Damien's. She could see his father, Mr. Caldwell, sitting proudly at the front, his eyes gleaming with approval. The Caldwell family, so perfect, so elegant, so powerful. They had accepted her, but only because of what Damien could give them. Her eyes shifted to Damien's ex-girlfriend, who stood near the back of the church. She was glaring at Maya, her eyes filled with jealousy and anger. Maya's stomach twisted. What if I'm making a huge mistake? As she reached the altar, the priest asked the traditional question. If anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. Maya froze. She glanced at Damien, who was looking at her with an expectant smile. But there was something in his eyes, something empty. For a split second, Maya's mind screamed at her to run, to escape. But she couldn't. Not now. Not in front of all these people. Not when her future was already sealed. She took a deep breath and nodded at the priest, signaling that everything was fine. But deep down, Maya knew. She had just stepped into a life she might never be able to escape from. Maya woke up the next morning, the soft golden light of dawn filtering through the luxurious curtains of the master bedroom. She could hear the soft hum of the house, the sound of staff bustling downstairs, preparing for another perfect day. She rolled over to see Damien still asleep beside her, his back turned toward her. His handsome features were softened in sleep, but the tension in his jaw, even when he was unconscious, told her more about the man than she had realized. He wasn't the perfect prince she had imagined him to be. The bed was enormous, the soft silk sheets smooth against her skin. But it felt too big. She was surrounded by opulence, yet she had never felt so alone. Trapped. Her eyes lingered on Damien's side of the bed. He hadn't even touched her the night before, even though they had spent the evening in the same room, in the same bed. She had been hoping, in some small corner of her heart, for something more, a sign that their marriage meant something to him. But the coldness, the absence of any warmth, had been more than enough to push all of her hopes aside. Maya slid out of bed carefully, trying not to disturb Damien's peaceful slumber. She needed to clear her head. She needed to breathe. She slipped into a soft robe and walked to the large window, gazing down at the manicured garden below. The beauty of the grounds was breathtaking, the sprawling lawns framed by tall stone walls that kept the world out. Her thoughts spiraled back to the wedding. Her marriage to a man who barely seemed to notice her. The weight of it all, pressed down on her chest. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Emma. "How's the honeymoon, girl? Are you okay?" Maya's fingers hovered over the keys, hesitating. How could she explain to her best friend what had happened? The beautiful wedding, the dream come true, and yet she felt like she had entered into a prison. She quickly typed a reply. "Not what I thought it would be. I think I've made a huge mistake." Before she could send the message, Damien stirred in the bed behind her. The soft sound of his voice broke the silence. "Maya," he called out, his voice thick with sleep. She turned, forcing a smile, but the smile felt empty. "Good morning," she replied, trying to sound normal. Damien sat up in bed, his hair ruffled from sleep. His eyes met hers, but there was something in them that felt distant, almost cold. "I've got to leave for a meeting in a bit," he said nonchalantly, as if that was all he had to say, as if his marriage to her was just another transaction. Maya nodded, feeling the ache in her chest grow. She wanted to ask him about their marriage, about how she was supposed to fit into his world, but she felt like an outsider, a stranger in her own home. He stood up, adjusting his expensive suit. "I'll see you tonight. You can do whatever you like around here. The staff will be at your disposal." His words were meant to be kind, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was being treated like a trophy, something to be displayed, not loved. He kissed her on the cheek before walking out of the room without a second glance. Maya stood there for a moment, stunned by the emptiness of the kiss. There was no passion, no affection. She felt like a ghost in her own marriage. The sound of footsteps in the hallway caught her attention. Mary, the housekeeper, appeared at the door with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell," she greeted cheerfully, but Maya could see the hesitation in her eyes. She was no longer just Maya, she was Mrs. Caldwell, the wife of a billionaire, a title that carried expectations and rules she wasn't ready for. "Good morning," Maya replied, her voice strained. "Can you show me around the house? I need something to do." Mary's smile widened, and she led Maya through the house, introducing her to the massive kitchen, the ballroom, and the grand living room with walls lined with expensive artwork. Maya tried to seem interested, but her mind kept drifting back to the weight of her situation. The mansion felt like a palace, but it was also a prison. There were no doors to escape, no windows to look through. She was stuck in a gilded cage. Every room, every hall, was a reminder that she had married the wrong man. As they walked through the house, Mary showed her the guest rooms, explaining that they were for visitors. "We'll have a lot of company this week," she said. "Mr. Caldwell has business to attend to, and we're hosting some important guests." Maya nodded absently, but as Mary walked ahead, Maya's eyes lingered on a portrait on the wall. It was of Damien and his family, his father, the stern Mr. Caldwell, and his beautiful, elegant mother. And there, standing beside them, was his ex-girlfriend. The woman's eyes were cold, calculating, like she still held a place in Damien's life that Maya would never fill. Maya's heart twisted as she stared at the photo. The woman in the portrait was too beautiful, too poised. Everything Maya wasn't. Her throat tightened with jealousy. Just then, Damien's voice echoed from the hallway. "Maya, come here." Maya turned to Mary, her eyes filled with silent questions. Mary gave her a knowing look, as if she understood exactly what Maya was feeling. "Don't worry, dear," Mary said softly. "He'll come around." But Maya wasn't sure. Would Damien ever see her as more than just a tool to fix his family's problems, or was she truly trapped in a luxury prison of her own making? The mansion felt more suffocating with each passing day. Every corner, every hallway whispered the same thing to Maya. "You don't belong here." She was caught in a world that wasn't her own, surrounded by luxury and opulence that did nothing but amplify the loneliness she felt. Maya had spent the last few days trying to adapt to her new life, but she felt like a ghost in her own home. Damien came and went, his absence only serving to deepen the emptiness of the house. He'd stop by for brief moments, a few words here and there, but those moments were so distant, they felt like strangers to her. It was the same every day. Damien would leave for work, and Maya would be left alone, trapped in a mansion that wasn't hers to control. The staff treated her with respect, but there was always an air of distance. She wasn't the lady of the house. She was a placeholder, a figurehead to keep up appearances. Maya spent hours wandering the halls, pacing, her thoughts racing. The mansion was enormous, far too big for one person to truly feel at home in. It felt like she was living in a museum, a showcase for the Caldwell family's wealth. And she was just the exhibit. One afternoon, after Damien had gone to yet another business meeting, Maya wandered into the garden. She stood in front of the large marble fountain, her fingers brushing the cool stone as she gazed at the lush greenery surrounding her. The sound of birds chirping, the soft rustle of the leaves in the wind, it should have been peaceful. But it only made her feel more alone. "Why am I here?" she whispered to herself, the question hanging in the air like a desperate prayer. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the silence. It was a message from Olivia. "Maya, I know something's off. You need to talk to me, please." She stared at the screen for a moment, her heart aching. Olivia was the only person who truly understood her. But could she really tell her the truth? The truth about her marriage? The truth about how she was trapped in a gilded cage, a marriage of convenience with a man who barely cared? Before she could respond, a voice cut through her thoughts. "Maya." She spun around, startled to see Damien standing behind her, his hands shoved in his pockets. His expression was unreadable, cold, as always. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his tone distant, as if he was asking about the weather, not his wife. "I was thinking," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She couldn't let him see how much he was affecting her, how much she was dying inside, piece by piece, each day spent in this luxurious prison. "You should come inside," he said, taking a step closer. "We're having a dinner party tonight. I'll need you to look presentable." Maya didn't answer right away. The idea of pretending, putting on the mask of the perfect wife, filled her with dread. But she couldn't escape it. She had no choice. Damien's eyes softened just for a moment, but it was enough for Maya to notice. She knew he wasn't a complete monster. There was something more beneath his cold exterior, something lost. But how could she trust him after everything? How could she trust someone who treated her like a pawn in his family's game? "Fine," she said, her voice quiet. "I'll come inside." As the evening approached, the mansion transformed. Staff were setting up for the dinner party. The fine china was laid out, silverware gleaming, and the wine glasses were filled with expensive red wine. The atmosphere was one of refinement, the air thick with expectation. Maya was just another accessory in this perfect world, a world she didn't belong to. Damien was busy with the guests, speaking with important business partners, while Maya floated around the room feeling like a shadow. She smiled politely when people spoke to her, but inside, she felt like she was suffocating. The rich, powerful. Guests didn't even notice her, except to comment on her beauty. How lucky she was to have caught the eye of Damien Caldwell, the heir to the Caldwell fortune. The night dragged on, the laughter and conversations around her blurring into background noise. Maya caught sight of Damien's ex-girlfriend, Elena, at the party. Elena was standing by the bar, her smile too perfect, her eyes too focused on Damien. Maya's chest tightened as she watched the way Elena and Damien exchanged glances. Glances full of history, of shared memories. She had seen that look before, but this time, it felt different. Damien's eyes lingered on her, just a little longer than they should have. Maya's heart sank. She wasn't the one he wanted. She was just the one he had been forced to marry. The thought made her sick to her stomach, but she pushed it aside. She couldn't stay in this life, pretending to be someone she wasn't, in a marriage that wasn't real. But how could she leave? Where would she go? Everything she had was tied to him now. The tension between Maya and Damien was palpable throughout the night. At one point, during a quiet moment in the hallway, Damien suddenly appeared beside her. "Maya?" he said quietly, his voice genuine for the first time in days. "I know this marriage isn't exactly what either of us expected." Maya turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been expecting more distance, more indifference from him. But now he was standing close, his eyes searching hers. "What do you want, Damien?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I want—" He paused, running a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "I want this to work. I never asked for this marriage, but we can make it something real." Maya's breath caught. Could it be possible? Could she still find happiness in this marriage? Or was it too late? Could she ever trust him again? Damien stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "I don't love her anymore, Maya. I never did. But I don't know how to get out of this family's expectations." The wall between them, built by years of deceit and manipulation, started to crack. Maya paced in her room late that night, unable to quiet the storm in her mind. The dinner party had ended, and Damien had retreated to his study, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The quiet of the mansion felt suffocating. The opulence surrounding her, everything she had ever dreamed of, now felt like a cage, locking her in with no way out. She had spent the last few days trying to convince herself that this was all temporary, that the isolation and the lack of connection between her and Damien would eventually fade. But now, standing in the cold emptiness of the mansion, Maya knew she couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. "I can't do this anymore." The word slipped from her lips like a quiet plea, but there was no one around to hear it. No one to answer her desperation. Her fingers ran through her hair as she walked to the window, looking out at the dark night. The lights of the mansion were too bright, the silence too overwhelming. She longed for something real, something that didn't feel like an illusion. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, her voice shaky. The door creaked open, and Mary, the housekeeper, stepped inside, her face full of concern. Maya had never seen her look this way. Usually, Mary had a smile on her lips, always polite, always professional. But tonight, there was something different. "Mrs. Caldwell, is everything okay?" Mary asked quietly, her eyes soft with empathy. Maya smiled weakly, shaking her head. "No, it's not okay. I don't know what I'm doing here, Mary." Mary closed the door behind her and walked slowly toward Maya, her expression full of understanding. She had been working in the Caldwell household for years, and Maya could see the familiarity of wealth and expectation etched into the lines of her face. But there was something more. Mary had lived through this. She knew what Maya was going through. "I know it's hard, dear," Mary said gently, sitting down beside her. "It's never easy being thrust into a life like this, especially when it feels like everyone is watching your every move." Maya's chest tightened. She hadn't expected anyone to understand, but Mary's words, there was something in them that made Maya feel less alone. Maybe someone did understand. "Why do you stay?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you stay in a life where you have no say? Why do you put up with this?" Mary's eyes softened, and she gave a small sigh. "I stay because sometimes you don't have a choice, but there is always a way out if you want it." Maya stared at her, bewildered. "What do you mean? What choice do I have?" Mary took a deep breath. "You don't have to be his wife just because you're wearing that dress. You're stronger than you think, but you've got to believe that. You have more control over your life than you realize. Don't let anyone tell you who you are or who you're supposed to be." Maya was silent for a long moment, processing what Mary had said. For the first time since the wedding, she felt a glimmer of something inside. Her hope? Freedom? It seemed impossible, but Mary's words struck a chord deep inside her. "Why are you helping me?" Maya finally asked, her voice trembling. "What's in it for you?" Mary smiled softly, her eyes full of kindness. "Nothing, dear. I just want you to see that you have power in this world, even if it doesn't seem that way right now. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Not even him." Maya felt a sudden rush of emotion. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to be trapped. She didn't have to let her life be controlled by Damien and his family. "Thank you," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Mary nodded, standing up. "Just remember, you don't have to be alone in this. You have allies, even in places you might not expect." Before Maya could say anything else, Mary quietly left the room, leaving Maya with a heavy heart but a mind suddenly filled with possibilities. The next morning, Maya stood before the mirror again, her hands trembling as she straightened her dress. She had been awake for hours, unable to sleep, the weight of the conversation with Mary still lingering in her thoughts. She had spent so much time trying to be what Damien wanted her to be, what his family expected her to be. But now, after hearing Mary's words, she realized she had been living someone else's life, and maybe it was time for her to stop pretending. Damien was still downstairs when Maya descended into the grand hallway, the echoes of her footsteps a reminder of how alone she felt in this vast mansion. He was standing by the window, talking to a business associate, the conversation about some upcoming deal. He didn't notice her at first, but when he turned, his eyes lingered on her. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying a hint of surprise. "You look different today." Maya felt a strange sense of power fill her. She wasn't just his wife anymore. She wasn't just the image of the perfect woman he had to display. She was a person with her own thoughts, her own feelings. "I'm not who you think I am, Damien," she said softly, her voice steady. "I'm not just some pretty trophy for you to show off. I'm not just the perfect wife you've been forced to marry." Damien blinked, his expression unreadable. For a moment he didn't say anything. The silence between them was thick, heavy with tension. Then he took a step closer. "Maya?" His voice was low, almost gentle, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, or maybe something else. "You don't have to pretend anymore. I know this marriage wasn't your choice, and He trailed off, looking away. "Then why did you marry me?" Maya asked, her voice trembling, but firm. "If you don't care, if this was just about appeasing your family, then why drag me into it?" Damien's eyes hardened. "Because it was easier. Easier to marry someone who didn't question everything. Someone I could control." Maya stepped back, the words stinging more than she expected, but she wasn't going to back down. "Well, I'm done being controlled," she said, her voice rising. "I'm not your puppet, Damien. I'm your wife, yes, but that doesn't mean I'm going to live in your shadow forever. I have my own life, and I won't let you dictate it anymore." Damien's jaw tightened, but this time, he didn't argue. Instead, he seemed almost defeated. Just as the tension between them reached its peak, Elena, Damien's ex-girlfriend, walked into the room, her eyes locking with Maya's. The quiet, confrontational stare that passed between them said everything. Elena smirked, not even trying to hide her disdain. "I see you're finally realizing your place, Maya. It's cute, really, but you're still just a placeholder." Maya's heart raced, but she didn't back down. She wasn't going to let Elena's words break her. "I'm not a placeholder," Maya said coldly, "and I'm not your competition. I'm my own person." Elena's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "We'll see about that." Maya stood at the balcony, her hands gripping the cold metal railing as she looked out over the vast estate. The wind tugged at her hair, the evening sky painted in hues of orange and purple, but it didn't comfort her. Nothing felt right anymore. The dinner party had ended, and the guests had all left. The mansion was once again silent, its grandeur mocking her loneliness. Inside, her mind raced with the words she had exchanged with Elena earlier. The way Elena had looked at her, like she didn't belong, like she was a temporary fixture in a life that was never meant for her. And the way Damien had been so distant with her, while his eyes lingered on Elena just a little too long. What was I thinking? Maya squeezed her eyes shut. She was trapped. Trapped in a marriage she hadn't chosen. Trapped in a life where her every move was scrutinized, where she was nothing more than a pawn in a game she didn't even know the rules to. She had tried so hard to fit in, to pretend that the luxury and attention were all that mattered. But every moment spent in Damien's world felt more like a performance than a life. "Maya?" She jumped at the sound of his voice, her heart skipping a beat. Damien was standing in the doorway, his suit still immaculate from the evening. But his face, his expression, was softer than it had been in days. There was something almost vulnerable in his eyes. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, stepping onto the balcony with her. "I thought you'd be in bed by now." Maya turned to face him, but her heart was still in turmoil. The distance between them felt so wide, so unbridgeable. But Damien's gaze, his soft, searching gaze, made her pause. She didn't know what to say, how to even explain everything she was feeling. "I don't know what to think anymore, Damien," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't love me. You've never loved me. You married me to please your family, and now I'm just stuck here, in a world that isn't mine." Damien's expression faltered, and for a moment, Maya thought he might walk away again. But then, he reached out, tentatively, almost unsure, and touched her arm. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "I didn't marry you because I had to. I married you because I thought you could give me the peace I needed." Maya's brow furrowed. "Peace? What do you mean by that?" Damien sighed, taking a step back. He ran his hand through his hair, looking down at the floor as if gathering the courage to speak the words he had been holding inside for so long. "I didn't want to marry Elena. I didn't want the life my family had planned for me. I was trying to escape, Maya. I wanted something real, something that wasn't about appearances. But I didn't know how to get out of it, how to change. Everything." Maya stood in stunned silence. The man she had married, the man who had seemed so cold, so distant, he was struggling too. He was trapped, just like her. But could she trust him? "I don't know if I can believe you, Damien," she said softly, looking away. "Every time I think I've figured you out, you surprise me. But you've hurt me too. You've treated me like I don't matter. You barely even touch me, and yet you expect me to believe you care." Damien took a deep breath and stepped closer. I know I've been distant. I've pushed you away because I didn't know how to handle all of this marriage, this life, the pressure from my family." He paused, his voice low, almost broken. "But I do care, Maya. I care about you more than you realize." Maya's heart fluttered, but she quickly shut the feeling down. He had hurt her too many times already. She couldn't afford to get caught in another illusion. "You say that now," she said, her voice laced with bitterness. "But where were you when I needed you? You've been running away from this, from us, from your own feelings." Damien's eyes darkened, and he took her hands in his. "I'm sorry, Maya. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I'm trying. I'm trying to make this work. I'm trying to make us work." For the first time, Maya didn't pull away. She let him hold her hands, her pulse racing. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the truth. But it was messy, it was complicated, and it was terrifying. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why do you suddenly want this now? After everything?" Damien's face softened, his gaze intense. "Because despite everything, I've realized something. I don't want to live a life where I'm pretending anymore. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not, someone my family wants me to be. But I want to be with you, Maya. For real." Maya's chest tightened. The emotions that had been buried for so long threatened to overwhelm her. He was finally saying the words she had been waiting for. But could she trust him? Could she believe that he truly wanted her for who she was, and not because she was the only option left? "I'm not sure what to believe anymore," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. "You hurt me, Damien. You pushed me away when I needed you the most. You let me feel like I was nothing more than an accessory." Damien's expression shifted, his eyes full of regret. He reached out, pulling her gently into an embrace, his warmth enveloping her. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry for the way I've treated you. I was scared. Scared of everything. Scared of losing control." Maya's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of the moment hanging between them. She wanted to push him away, to walk out and never look back. But something inside her, something deeper than the hurt and betrayal, was telling her to stay, to give him a chance. "Damien," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you completely. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try if you are. For the first time in weeks, Damien smiled, a smile that was full of relief and hope. I'll do whatever it takes, Maya. I'll earn your trust. The moment stretched between them, their faces inches apart. And for a brief moment, all the pain, all the betrayal, faded into the background as their lips met in a kiss. Soft, tentative, but full of something more. A promise. A second chance. Just as they pulled away, the door to the balcony suddenly opened with a sharp creak. Elena stood there, her arms crossed, a look of pure disdain etched on her face. What is this? A moment of reconciliation? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You've got to be kidding me, Damien. Maya stepped back, her heart sinking as she looked at Elena. The moment felt like it was slipping through her fingers, but she wasn't going to let Elena ruin this. Not again. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she stood facing Elena in the doorway. The atmosphere in the room was charged, every inch of the air thick with unspoken words. Elena's presence felt like an unwelcome intrusion, a reminder of the past that Damien was struggling to move past. What do you want, Elena? Maya asked, her voice steady, though her insides were in turmoil. The kiss with Damien had ignited something deep within her, a fragile hope, a dangerous belief that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. But Elena's arrival threatened to shatter that hope. Elena stepped into the room, her gaze flickering, between Maya and Damien. Her lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it, only resentment and bitterness. I came to see how long it would take before you two started pretending again, Elena said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. How sweet! A little reconciliation and suddenly everything's perfect. Damien stepped forward, his face hardening. This is none of your business, Elena. Elena shot him a sharp look. Of course it's my business, Damien. You never really let me go. And now, you're trying to move on with her? She nodded toward Maya, her expression full of disdain. You're making a mistake. You know that, don't you? Maya's chest tightened and she felt a surge of anger. Who was Elena to tell her what Damien's life should look like? I'm not a mistake, Maya said, her voice rising. And I'm not some replacement for you, Elena. Damien chose me and I'm here, living this life with him, whether you like it or not. Elena's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Maya thought she might say something cruel, something meant to hurt. But instead, Elena just shook her head. You don't know him the way I do, Maya. He's not the man you think he is. Maya felt a stab of doubt, but she quickly pushed it aside. She couldn't let Elena's words break her. She had come this far, had fought for so long. She wasn't going to let Elena destroy her chance at something real. I'm not here to fight with you, Maya said, her voice cold. You're the one who can't move on, not me. Elena's expression flickered, her facade cracking, for a moment. But before Maya could react, Elena quickly masked it with a smirk. You're right. I can't move on, because Damien was supposed to be mine, Elena said, her voice low, almost vulnerable. But I guess if he's really chosen you, Maya, then I'll just have to let him go. Maya felt a strange, uncomfortable sense of victory. It wasn't the kind of win she wanted. She didn't want to take someone's place, especially not in this twisted situation. But she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't be the second choice. As Elena turned to leave, Maya's eyes followed her, a mix of confusion and relief filling her chest. Damien stepped closer to Maya, his eyes searching hers. I didn't want to hurt you, Maya, he said softly. I never wanted any of this. But I'm trying now. For you. Maya turned to face him, her gaze steady. You say that, but the question is, Damien, what are you really trying to fix? Us? Or just your own guilt? He hesitated, his expression shifting like he was unsure how to answer. "I don't know, Maya," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice catching her off guard. "But I want to figure it out with you. I can't promise everything will be easy, but I'm here now, and I want to make this work. I want you." For a moment, Maya didn't know what to say. She felt a mix of emotions, relief, confusion, and the distant, yet still present, shadow of distrust. She had waited so long for this moment, for Damien to finally open up. But now that it was here, she wasn't sure if it was too late. Had he already hurt her too much? Could she still believe him? Maya took a step back, her hands trembling. "I don't know if I can believe you, Damien. I don't know if I can trust you after everything that's happened." He reached out to her, but this time she didn't pull away. "I understand," he said, his voice steady but full of regret. "But I'm asking for a chance. Please, let me prove it to you." The silence between them was heavy, but for the first time, it felt like there was hope. Real hope. But also a fear that if she took a chance on him now, she would be setting herself up for more pain. The fear that he might disappoint her again. "I don't know if I can do this," Maya whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "But I can't keep living like this either." Damien nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then we'll take it one step at a time, whatever it takes, Maya." The days that followed were a blur. Damien made efforts to change. Slow, careful efforts. He no longer retreated to his office after work. He spent more time with her, even shared more about his past, his struggles with his family, the weight of expectations that had never been his to bear. But despite the shifts, there was still a distance, a lingering tension that neither of them could fully erase. One evening, after another long day spent at Damien's side, Maya found herself sitting alone in the library. She ran her fingers over the edges of the bookshelves, feeling the weight of the past. The silence in the house was deafening, and the uncertainty in her heart seemed to echo through the walls. It was then that she heard footsteps behind her. "Maya?" She turned to see Damien standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. His expression was soft, but there was something different in his eyes, something that made Maya's heart skip. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady, "about us, about what we want." Maya swallowed, her throat tight. "And what do we want, Damien?" He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want you. I know I've messed up, but I want to fix it. I want to build something real between us. I'm tired of living a life that's dictated by everyone else. I want you to be my partner, in everything." Maya's breath caught. He meant it. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no walls between them. He wasn't just asking for her forgiveness. He was asking for her trust. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. She could see the truth in his eyes. He was still afraid of the things that could tear them apart. She could still feel the weight of their past, mistakes hanging over them. Yet, for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she wasn't alone in this marriage. That maybe, just maybe, they could figure it out together. Just as Damien reached for her hand, the doorbell rang, breaking the intimate moment. Elena was standing there, her face unreadable. "Maya?" Elena said, her voice flat. "Damien? I need to talk to you. It's about the business deal." Maya's heart sank. Just when she thought things were finally shifting, Elena had to show up again. The air in the mansion seemed to freeze as Elena stood at the door, her eyes sharp, her presence demanding attention. Maya's chest tightened, and for a moment, the world around her blurred. It felt like time had come to a standstill, the reality of the situation settling in. Damien's hand slowly dropped from Maya's, his face immediately hardening as he stepped toward the door. "Maya," Elena said, her voice laced with that familiar, cool detachment. I need to talk to Damien. It's important. Maya glanced at Damien, his expression unreadable. The tension between them was thick, heavier than she had ever felt before. This was the moment she had dreaded, the moment where everything that had been building between her and Damien seemed to come undone. Damien, I thought we were past this, Maya said, her voice strained but steady. Why is she still here? Why does she keep coming back? Damien turned, his eyes filled with guilt and frustration. Maya, Don't, Maya interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. She could feel the familiar ache in her chest, the anger bubbling up. I've been patient, Damien. I've been trying to understand, to give you space, but it's always going to be like this, isn't it? You'll always have her between us. Elena, sensing the growing tension, took a small step back, though her gaze never wavered from Maya. Maya, she said softly, almost as if she were speaking to someone beneath her. Damien and I have history. A history that you'll never fully understand. I was the one who truly loved him. You're just here because he needed someone to fill the space. The words hit Maya like a slap, and she felt her stomach twist in anger and hurt. Was Elena right? Was she just a placeholder in Damien's life? The thought was paralyzing. Everything she had believed in, everything that she had hoped for, seemed to crumble in that moment. Damien, seeing Maya's pain, stepped toward her. Elena, that's enough, he said, his voice low but firm. You've made your point, and now it's time to leave. Elena didn't move. Instead, she turned her gaze back to Maya, her eyes sharp. You think you can fix him, don't you? She asked, her voice tinged with bitterness. You think that after everything he's done, you can somehow save him. But the truth is, he's already mine. You're just a passing phase. The words stung, but Maya wasn't going to let Elena win. She had spent too long questioning her worth, allowing others to dictate her fate. She wasn't going to be silenced now. Damien, Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. If you really want this to work, if you want us to work, you need to choose. You can't keep holding on to the past while I'm standing here, giving you everything I have. I can't be second to anyone, especially not to someone who doesn't respect me. Damien's eyes flickered with a mix of regret and determination. He looked between Maya and Elena, and for the first time, Maya saw him truly torn. He was facing the consequences of the choices he had made. He had to confront his past, his family's expectations, and the woman who had been his everything, until now. Maya, Damien said softly, taking a step toward her. You're right. I can't keep living in the past. I've been running from my own feelings, from the truth of what I want. His voice broke slightly, his hands fidgeting nervously. I choose you. I've chosen you, and I need you to know that. The words hung in the air, a promise and a confession all at once. Maya's heart raced, but doubt crept into her thoughts. Could he really choose her, or was this just another moment of impulse? Elena, clearly annoyed by the emotional exchange, let out a bitter laugh. You think you can just throw me aside like this? Do you honestly think I'm going to let you walk away so easily, Damien? Her voice became sharp, almost menacing. Maya, I want you to understand something, Elena continued, her tone colder now. You'll never replace me. No matter how hard you try, you'll always be the second choice. Maya's body tensed, and for a moment, she almost let her insecurities win, but she quickly shut them down, drawing on every ounce of strength she had left. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Maya said, her voice firm. I'm just trying to build a life with Damien, one that's real. If that's something you can't accept, then maybe it's time for you to leave, Elena. It's my turn now. Elena's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent for a long moment. Then, with a final, sharp glance at Damien, she turned on her heel and walked out, the door slamming behind her. Maya stood frozen, her heart still pounding. She had spoken the truth, but the weight of Elena's words still lingered in the air. Damien turned back to her, his expression a mix of relief and guilt. "I'm sorry, Maya," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to have to go through this. I didn't want to hurt you." Maya swallowed hard, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Damien. I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is fine when you're so connected to her." Damien stepped closer, his hands reaching for hers. "Maya, I'm choosing you, I swear. I'm done with the past. I know it's going to take time to prove it to you, but I will. I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, and I won't let Elena come between us." For a moment, the world seemed to stop, and all Maya could hear was the steady beat of her heart. He loved her. The words she had been waiting for. But could she trust him? Could she really let go of all the hurt and give him a chance? Before Maya could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Damien and Maya turned at the same time, only to find Mr. Caldwell, Damien's father, standing in the doorway, his expression cold and calculating. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Mr. Caldwell said, his voice clipped. "But we need to talk, all of you." The sudden intrusion made Maya's stomach drop. What now? Maya's heart sank as she stared at Mr. Caldwell standing in the doorway like a shadow. The air in the room thickened with the sudden weight of his presence, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Damien's father was not a man who could be easily ignored. He was the patriarch of the Caldwell family, the one who had built their empire, the one who expected obedience, and the one who held the power to make or break careers. And now, standing in the doorway, he had the power to decide the fate of Maya and Damien's marriage. "Maya, Damien," Mr. Caldwell said, his voice cold, controlled. "We need to talk. All of you." Damien's posture stiffened, his hand instinctively tightening around Maya's. "Dad, what's going on? What is this about?" Mr. Caldwell stepped further into the room, his gaze sweeping over them. There was no warmth in his eyes, only a cold, calculating look that made Maya feel like a pawn in a game she didn't even want to play. "You both know how important family is in this business," Mr. Caldwell began, his eyes now focused on Maya. "You've married into a legacy, Maya. This isn't just about you or Damien anymore. It's about the future of the Caldwell Enterprises." Maya felt the weight of his words settle over her like a heavy cloak. The past few weeks had felt like an emotional roller coaster, but now, standing before Damien's father, everything became crystal clear. This wasn't just a marriage. This was an arranged deal, built on power and money. "I'm aware of what this marriage means," Maya said, her voice shaking but determined. "But I didn't marry for business. I married for love, or at least I thought I did." Mr. Caldwell's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward, his gaze intense. "Love? Do you think this is about love, Maya? Do you think any of this empire, this family, this life, was ever about love?" Damien stepped in front of her, his voice firm, protective. "Dad, stop. You don't get to speak to her like that. She's my wife." Mr. Caldwell's jaw clenched, and for a moment, Maya wondered if the tension would snap. But then, he looked at his son, and the coldness in his gaze softened just enough for Maya to see something different in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or maybe fear. "You're not ready for this, Damien," Mr. Caldwell said softly, as though it pained him to admit it. "You think you can just walk away from everything your mother and I built? You can't just toss all of this aside for a woman who doesn't even understand what it means to be a Caldwell." Maya's breath caught. Was this the reality? Was this the world Damien had been born into? A world where love didn't matter? Where power and status dictated everything? "Enough!" Maya finally shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. I'm not some bargaining chip in this twisted game of yours, and neither is Damien. We're people, not pawns. And I won't be treated like this anymore. The room was silent for a moment. Maya's words hung in the air, thick with defiance. She had never felt more certain of anything in her life. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even Damien's father, define who she was or how she lived her life. I love Damien, she continued, her voice strong. And yes, we have problems. But this marriage, this life, is ours. And no one, not even you, has the right to take that away. Mr. Caldwell's expression hardened, but he didn't speak. Damien stood beside Maya, his eyes locked on his. Father? For the first time, there was a sense of determination in his gaze, a desire to fight for something real, something that mattered to him. I'm choosing Maya, Dad, Damien said, his voice unwavering. I'm choosing us. You can't control me anymore. This is my life. Mr. Caldwell was silent for a long moment, his eyes flickering between the two of them. Then, with a sigh, he finally spoke. I never wanted this for you, Damien, he said quietly. I never wanted you to live in my shadow. But I was trying to protect you, protect the family name. He turned his eyes to Maya, his gaze softer now. But I suppose it's your choice, Damien. I can't make it for you. Damien reached for Maya's hand, and for the first time in their marriage, she felt a deep sense of connection. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without its struggles. But in that moment, she knew they were on the same side. I'm not afraid anymore, Damien said, his voice full of conviction. I'm going to make my own way. With Maya. No more expectations. No more secrets. Mr. Caldwell looked at his son for a long time before he finally nodded, a mix of regret and resignation in his eyes. I'll respect your decision, Damien. But know this. You're walking away from a legacy that can never be rebuilt. You're choosing her over everything we've worked for. Maya could feel the weight of Mr. Caldwell's words, but she didn't let it shake her. She wasn't going to let anyone tell her how to live. She wasn't going to live in the shadows of power or legacy. She was going to build something real with Damien, something that was truly theirs. Damien, what now? Maya asked, her voice soft but full of hope. Damien turned to her, his eyes filled with sincerity and a deep, quiet promise. We make our own future. Together. As they stood there, holding hands, the weight of their choices settling between them, the door suddenly opened again. This time, it wasn't Mr. Caldwell standing there. It was Elena. She walked into the room, her gaze shifting between the two of them. There was no smirk, no bitterness this time, just a look of quiet understanding. I came to apologize, she said, her voice calm, for everything, for getting in the way. You two deserve to be happy, whether I agree with it or not. Maya stared at her for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had never expected this from Elena. But maybe this was the final piece of the puzzle. Thank you, Maya said softly, her voice full of surprise. I don't know if I can forgive everything, but I appreciate it. Elena nodded, then turned to Damien. Take care of her, Damien. She's a good woman. With that, Elena walked out, leaving behind a room full of possibilities that belonged to Maya and Damien. Maya and Damien stood in silence for a moment, their fingers entwined. The weight of the past had been heavy, but now it was their choice. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and obstacles, but it was theirs to build. I love you, Damien whispered. Maya smiled softly, the words she had longed to hear. I love you too. And for the first time, Maya truly believed it. This was just the beginning, and together, they could face whatever came next, on their own terms. And so, Maya and Damien's story came full circle. From a marriage built on confusion, expectations, and past mistakes, they had managed to carve out something real, something that belonged to them and them alone. It hadn't been easy, and the road was still uncertain, but the foundation they were building was strong, grounded in the raw truth of their emotions. They had faced family pressures, confrontations with the past, and their own insecurities. But in the end, they chose each other, not because it was easy, but because they were finally ready to face the world on their own terms. It wasn't about legacy or power anymore. It wasn't about the shadows of their past or the people who tried to control them. It was about hope, forgiveness, and the strength to choose a love that wasn't defined by anyone else's expectations. Maya had learned to trust herself, her own worth, her own strength. And Damien, for the first time, had chosen to be honest, to be with someone who loved him for who he truly was, not just for the role he was expected to play. The future was uncertain, and there would be more challenges ahead, but together, they knew they could face anything. They were no longer just a man and woman bound by a contract, no longer just a billionaire and his trophy wife. They were partners, equals, building a life that was truly their own. As they walked hand in hand into the unknown, they were ready to face whatever came their way. Because love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing to keep going, even when the path was uncertain, and together, they would continue their journey. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional, drama-filled tales. Stay tuned for the next chapter, because this is only the beginning.